Okay, guys, so last class, I'm pretty sure this is the slide that we finished on, right? Yeah. My ear, right here on my ears, just been wearing masks so much, it really hurts. All right, so last class we started talking about attitudes and how attitude and behavior go together. Talked about how attitudes affect actions, persuasion techniques, and whatnot. All right, so attitudes affect actions, but action and behavior and the role that you play also affect our attitude. Okay? Sometimes behaving in a certain way can make you feel a certain way about something or can influence your judgment. And this is often used to persuade people as well, and get people to act in a way that will then make them more likely to do something else. And these are sales techniques. These are also things that you can use with your teachers or your parents or whatnot. So there's a phenomenon, what is called the foot in the door phenomenon. And some of you have probably used it before without even realizing that it's a psychological technique. If you want somebody to agree to something large, okay? If you want your parents to give you $75 for something next weekend, don't wait until next weekend to ask them for $75. Ask them for $30 this weekend. If they agree to that, then they are, based off of this, more likely to agree to give you $75 next weekend. Foot in the door phenomenon is this phenomenon where once we agree to something small, we are actually more willing to agree to something bigger after that. Remember the video that we watched last class, the picketing against everything with nothing? To get people to agree to hold a sign and walk around picketing, they first gave them a blank sheet of paper, a pamphlet. Once the person had taken the pamphlet, they were then much more likely to agree to take a sign, because they had already complied with a smaller request, and once we do that, we're kind of bought into it. You'll see this if you ever go to like Eastern Europe or certain parts of Asia or whatnot. We'll use the Hare Krishnas, for example, which is a religious group, and a lot of times they go around like trying to sell things on the street. One of the things that they will do to try to get people to buy something is they will just hand somebody something. Look, I just handed Eric a stapler. He just took it not even knowing why he was taking a stapler. All right, we have a tendency as humans, and it's a weird thing, but they have studied this, that like, if somebody hands you something, we just take it. Okay? Someone used this for a sales pitch. They started with a survey, then asked if I want to start it. Yes, okay, that's a great example. Okay? She said they started with a survey and then asked if they wanted to start a free trial. That's foot in the door. Okay? But the Hare Krishnas, what they will do is they will just hand you something. And we just, as humans, we just automatically take it. Once we have taken it, we are then more likely to be more willing to buy something for some reason. Okay? So, foot in the door, agreeing to something small. Once we agree to something small, we are more likely to agree to something larger. There is also, I don't have it on here, but the flip side, the opposite of this is like, if you want your parents to agree to something, but you're afraid that they won't, another thing you can do is ask them for something really big that you know that they will say no to. And then ask them for the smaller thing. Because once they say no to the really big thing, the smaller thing looks more reasonable in comparison. If you want your boyfriend or girlfriend to come over tonight, but you're afraid your parents will say no, you're going to ask them if they can come over, if you could go away for the weekend with your boyfriend or girlfriend. Something that you know that they are going to say no to. Then when they say no to that, you say, well, could they at least come over tonight? They're like, oh, okay. So, any questions there about foot in the door? This is how things like atrocities happen. Okay, the Holocaust didn't just happen like overnight. It wasn't just like all of a sudden everybody agreed, all right, it's time for a Holocaust. Okay, it started small, and then as people were more and more willing to go, it got bigger and bigger, all right, and people just went along with it. So, not only does like agreeing to do something change our attitude, but one of the things that they have found is that whatever role we are playing, meaning whatever it is, whether we, role as in, you all have different roles, I have different roles, I'm a teacher, I'm a coach, a brother, boyfriend, okay, all of these different things, and so are you all. Whatever role we are playing, we tend to follow the social scripts that fit that role. Okay, social scripts are basically how do we think we're supposed to act in certain situations. And if you're given a position of authority, you are more likely to act in an authoritarian manner. Now, the most famous example of this, the most famous study done in psychology, it's kind of not the most accurate, but we'll talk about why here in a sec, is the Stanford Prison Experiment, done in 1972. Now, has anybody watched that movie? Anybody on Zoom watch the Stanford Prison Experiment? It's on Netflix. Highly recommend it. It is really good. It is very, very accurate to what actually happened. So, Stanford Prison Experiment is part of what's called the Big Three, which is Stanford Prison Experiment, Solomon Ash's study on conformity, and Stanley Milgram's study on obedience. And so all of these come out of the Holocaust and looking to see, well, what circumstances make people do these things. And what Zimbardo wanted to look at was how prison as an institution influenced people and changed people's behavior. So what he did was he set up a mock prison in the basement of the psychology building at Stanford over the summer. And he put out flyers in Palo Alto, where Stanford is, looking for college-age males to volunteer for a 2-week-long study that they would get paid for on prison. They got like probably 50 volunteers. They did psych evaluations, seeing if they had any authoritarian tendencies or whatnot. They didn't. I think they chose about 30 people. And then they randomly assigned them to be either prisoners or guards. They flipped a coin for each one. So everybody had a 50-50 shot of being either a prisoner or a guard. Once they had that figured out, they got the Palo Alto Police Department involved. They went and arrested the prisoners. And remember, these are just normal college students. They hadn't done anything wrong. Okay? They went and arrested the prisoners. They blindfolded them, walked them into the prison, stripped them naked, gave them basically a sheet to wear, put shackles on their ankles, they put a stocking on their head, and they gave them a number. That number is really important because it dehumanized them. For the guards, they gave them guard uniforms, they gave them a billy club, and they gave them sunglasses. We'll talk about later on why the sunglasses were important. They expected it to last for 14 days. They had to shut it down after 6 days because the guards started to physically abuse the prisoners. Now remember, these are all just college students. They started to physically abuse the prisoners within a day, and the prisoners started having psychological breakdowns within the first day. And the conclusion was that simply by being given the role, the guards became guards. Like they became actual prison guards with that mentality that these prisoners were dangerous. And the prisoners actually became prisoners. They did become kind of dangerous, but they also developed a sense of learned helplessness. All right, so we're going to watch a quick video on that, but that is how role affecting attitude.
One of the most infamous psychological studies ever conducted was the Stanford Prison Experiment. It's mentioned in almost every intro to psychology textbook. They tend to focus on how unethical it was and are less critical of its supposed conclusion. August 14th, 1971, Palo Alto, California. 12 young men are rounded up from their homes by police, placed under arrest, and brought to a makeshift prison in the basement of Stanford University. It all begins as a study on the psychology of prison life, led by Stanford psychology professor Dr. Philip Zimbardo. 24 volunteers, 12 guards, and 12 prisoners have agreed to spend the next 2 weeks recreating life in a correctional facility.
This is unbelievable. It took my clothes. Hands off the door.
The prisoners are booked and stripped nude. They're no longer individuals, forced to wear smocks, stocking caps, and shackles, identified only by their prisoner numbers.
Evolved into a confrontation. The guard showing the prisoners who's boss.
Yeah.
The guards quickly adapt to their new profession. Given anonymity by their mirrored sunglasses, some of them start to control the meager food rations, restrict prisoners' bathroom use, and, as tensions rise, so do their cruel methods. Within just 6 days of the planned 2-week study, conditions are so bad that the entire operation is shut down.
I'm inside! Help out! Damn it!
The study makes international headlines. Zimbardo's fame skyrockets, and his conclusions are taught to students worldwide, used as a defense in criminal trials, and are even submitted to Congress to explain the abuses inflicted at Abu Ghraib. The study brings up a question just as important then as it is today. Is evil caused by the environment or the personalities in it? Zimbardo's shocking conclusion is that when people feel anonymous and have power over depersonalized others, they can easily become evil, and it occurs more often than we'd like to admit. But while it's true that people were mean to each other during the Stanford Prison Experiment, what if what truly caused that behavior wasn't what we've always been told?
Okay, so there you go. Just kind of an overview. Now, what he's kind of talking about, there is a lot of controversy with the Stanford Prison Experiment. That maybe Zimbardo came to conclusions that weren't necessarily correct. B, it's not really an experiment. Okay, and then C, probably the biggest one, is that Zimbardo had thoughts of what he wanted to happen, and he kind of set up a system that ended up kind of being a self-fulfilling prophecy. And once what he wanted to happen started happening, he kind of kept pushing it and pushing it. All right, he was not a neutral observer. He actually became the warden of the prison and inserted himself into the experiment. And they had told the guards that they couldn't physically touch the prisoners, but once they started physically abusing them, they did not stop them from doing it. So, some issues there. If you're interested, watch the movie. It's excellent. Okay. All right, now, going to do a little activity. So I'm going to give you a scenario. I'm going to read it to you. And then I'm going to give you a question. And all you're going to do, you're just going to fill out a poll. And I just want to see what people think. All right. Suppose you had volunteered to participate in a psychology experiment on campus. Upon arrival, you were seated at a table and asked to undertake a series of dull, meaningless tasks for about an hour. Afterward, the experimenter convinced you to extol the virtues of the tasks you had performed by describing them to other potential participants as highly worthwhile, interesting, and educational. You were paid either $1 or $20 to do this. Suppose you were then asked to privately rate your enjoyment of the tasks on a questionnaire. After which amount do you believe your actual enjoyment rating of the task would be higher? After being paid $1 or $20? So you're asked to give the virtues of it and then privately rate your actual enjoyment. Which one would you rate? Do you think would rate their enjoyment higher? They were paid $1 or $20. Go ahead and answer that in this poll. Okay, all right, we got almost everybody. No Ryan Clark, no Ryan Houston, no Dean, no Sullivan. Okay, so 81% say $20. That's the normal answer. What every class answers that way. Unless they figured out at this point that a lot of times these are tricks. Because $20 is the incorrect answer. All right? Actually, your enjoyment rating of it would be higher after being paid only $1. Now, I want you to think about it for a sec. Why might that be? This is an actual experiment. Why might your enjoyment rating of the test be higher after being paid only $1 rather than $20? All right. Okay, let's focus on the money. Eric? Not really sure. Yeah, it's a hard question. All right, they're not in it for the money. Well, they didn't even know they got paid afterwards. So they didn't even know. Anybody else have a guess? Why might enjoyment rating be higher after $1? It's a joke? Maybe. Well, no. Nobody else has a guess? I don't say it's a hard question. It's not that hard of a question. Okay, maybe they didn't think they deserved it. What about the fact that if you just spend an hour doing something really boring, and then you're paid $20 for it, you can justify doing it that you did it for an hour for $20. You're like, all right, $20 for an hour, that's not bad. Okay, so you can say that was boring as shit, but at least I got paid, so that kind of sucked, but whatever. It kind of sucked, but whatever. But if you're only paid $1 after doing a boring task for an hour, you don't have that excuse, that money excuse to fall back on. And so you're just left there sitting, saying, I just did something really boring for an hour for only $1. That kind of goes against like what we believe about ourselves. So what we have to try to do is justify why we did this boring task for an hour. And the easiest way to do that is to say, well, I enjoyed it. I did it for an hour because I enjoyed it. You essentially convince yourself. This is what is called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is when our attitudes and our actions don't match up. We feel one way and we act in an opposite way. And that causes mental tension or cognitive dissonance. Dissonance is when everything is like off key. And we want to reduce this. So a lot of times what we do is we will either rationalize, we'll change our attitude to match our behavior. That's the easiest thing to do. Or we will change our behavior to match our attitude. But a lot of times attitude just follows behavior. Behavior is the horse, and then attitude is the cart. Okay? And we just have to rationalize it. There was a study done in 1934 by a guy named LaPierre. I don't know, his first name was Frank. I don't know. Okay? And what he did, so in the 1930s, were people from China, Japan, Korea, were they very popular in the United States? No. Okay? And really anybody who wasn't just regular white, it was not very popular, but Asians and African Americans really, really not liked. And there was a lot of discrimination against Asians at that point. One of the things a lot of times was Asian people were not allowed to eat in certain restaurants, just like black people. Okay? So what LaPierre did was he went around the country, mostly in the Midwest, but he went around the country with a Chinese couple. And they went to 184 different restaurants that said that they would not serve Asians. Only once were they denied service. 6 months after this, LaPierre mailed surveys to all of the restaurants asking them if they would serve Asians. What do you think they said?
They probably said what they said in the beginning that they would serve them.
Right. They said, 91% of restaurants that they went to that they were served at said back that they would not serve Asians. So what's the justification for if they say they don't serve Asians, but then they serve the Chinese couple? They got to figure out a way to justify that. That causes cognitive dissonance, and so we got to figure out a way to justify it. So they may have said like, oh, well, they were with a white person or something like that, just to justify, because when our behavior and our attitude don't match up, it causes us anxiety. Can anybody think of any other good examples of cognitive dissonance? Anyone? Go on, guys. We deal with this all the time. Okay, if you're on a diet trying to justify eating a dozen donuts, people do that like when they're on a diet and they have like a cheat day. Well, that cheat day, they may just say it's a cheat day after the fact, after they ate a dozen donuts, and they're like, well, shit, I guess that was a cheat day. Okay? Has anybody in here ever been nice to somebody that you don't like? Yeah. Okay? That's cognitive dissonance. All right? We justify it. We say, well, it's impolite to not be nice, or blah, blah, blah. I'll give you another interesting example. At least I think it's interesting. So, the vast majority of African Americans that voted in the 2008-2012 election voted for Barack Obama. Okay? But that doesn't mean that, they obviously voted first black president, okay? That doesn't mean that all African Americans agree with everything that Barack Obama did. One of the things that they overwhelmingly did not agree with. And this is, so homosexuality has not been nearly as accepted in the African American community than it has been in other communities. Okay, homosexuality is much more taboo in the African American community. Barack Obama legalized gay marriage. That caused cognitive dissonance with African Americans. Because they say, all right, here's this person that we elected, okay, and now he's doing something that doesn't fit with our values. And what they had to do was try to figure out a way to circle that square, right? And one of the things that they did one of the impacts it had was that actually the African American community became more accepting of homosexuality once Barack Obama had legalized gay marriage, okay, because of that cognitive dissonance. All right, so anybody got any questions there about cognitive dissonance? Okay. All right. So we are going to go ahead and move on to the next PowerPoint. We'll talk about conformity. All right, there is the link.
What would example of like cognitive dissonance be? Like when you say you don't want to go to the gym because you're like tired.
That sounds like we're just making an excuse. It could be more like, all right, if you like know that you need to work out, but you just keep playing video games, and then you've got to justify why. Like you'd be like, well, I worked out yesterday, so it's fine. All right, so I think most of us know what conformity and obedience are. And so we're just going to get a little bit more in depth on this, but it is pretty straightforward. I really find it hilarious. You see it a lot right now, like all the like anti-COVID people who are like, oh, you all you conformists, all you sheeple, wearing your mask, following what the man's telling you to do. Sheep, I hate that phrase, sheeple. So stupid. But they're like going around calling all these people like, oh, you're just following the rules and conforming and whatnot. And then they're all wearing like their MAGA uniforms of like they're all like have the red hat on and a shirt with like Donald Trump riding an eagle with an AK-47 waving a Blue Lives Matter flag. Okay, and they're like, oh, and I'm the one conforming by wearing a mask. So generally, people that accuse other people of conforming are the biggest conformers. All right, so attitude goes into conformity and obedience. Okay, we gotta have a certain attitude to be willing to conform, be willing to obey. So one of the big things that goes into conformity and obedience are what are called norms. Norms are just the rule of thumb, the rules of thumb for how we are supposed to behave in certain situations and in certain environments and in certain cultures. Now, if we wanted to use a psychological term for rule of thumb, what would it be? Social norms would be a what? Anybody remember what that term is? Rules of thumb that we use to make quicker decisions about things. Not always accurate.
Heuristic.
Yeah, yep. Heuristics. Okay, heuristics. So norms differ. Yeah, so like we have norms of conformity, right? How we are supposed to fit in what situations are we supposed to just go along with the group. We have norms of obedience. Some cultures expect you to be much more obedient to like your elders than other cultures. Okay, and that is a norm. We have norms for all these, for public behavior. When I was in India, right, one of the things this was out in one of the more rural areas I was in, out in the desert by Pakistan, in a city called Jaisalmer. Right, but the sewage system was just like on troughs on the side of the road, basically. So sewage just ran through that. It was all open, and it was not uncommon to see males, particularly, simply just squatting on the side of the road, just taking a poop in the sewage system right there. Right? It's not uncommon. Now, that would not be acceptable here, right? But that is not part of our norms. All right, can anybody think of any other good examples of norms? They're like these are usually like unspoken, all right, and we just kind of learn them. Anyone? One of the biggest ones is personal space, and like how much. There's actually a field of research on it. It's called proxemics, but like different cultures have different ideas of personal space. I think I told you, but when I was in India, the first day I was there, we were waiting in line for a train to get a train ticket, and there was a guy. If we wait in line, we generally have probably 2 or 3 feet in between everybody. There was literally a guy who I might as well have just been giving him a piggyback ride. He was so close to me in the line. Okay, but the norms of personal space differ a lot by cultures. Okay, so anybody got any questions about norms? All right, we're not going to watch. All right, so there are a lot of different factors that go into conformity. Conformity is obviously going along with the group. One of the aspects that go along with conformity is the fact that behavior is contagious. Okay? That when we see people acting in a certain way, we oftentimes mimic their behavior. Right? Humans automatically mimic other people because it shows empathy. And by mimicking, we fit in. There's the scene from The Office when in the branch merger episode, and Andy's talking about how he's going to fit in there. And one of the things he says is behavior mirroring. Okay, basically just mimicking the behavior of everybody else. Okay, but mimicry makes us fit in. Those mirror neurons, okay, nothing we can do about it. This is called the chameleon effect. And this is why, yawning is contagious. When one person yawns, or everybody else is going to yawn. Touching your face is contagious. Right? I don't do it as much because I have a mask on, but like, if I don't have a mask on and I have a beard like I do right now, right, I mess with my beard all the time. It's kind of annoying. I don't even think about it. drives my mom crazy. Okay, and my girlfriend just makes fun of me for it. All right, but if you're talking to somebody and touching your face, they are more likely to touch their face. Same thing with posture. If I'm talking to you and crossing my arms, you're more likely to cross your arms. I've done an experiment before in class where usually I have the desk facing inward, and so I have like an alley to walk down in the middle. And I've had it so I've told half of the class that on my signal for all of them on one side to cross their legs at the same time. And what do you think happens on the other side of the classroom when that happens, when they do that? They all just like automatically cross their legs. Okay, it's very strange. Tones of voice, emotion, laughter. Okay, all of these things we mimic. Now, that shows empathy. This can turn to what is called a social contagion, though. A social contagion is when all of a sudden something just permeates a society. There's a famous case called the Dancing Plague of 1518, which happened in Strasbourg, France. And all of a sudden, in this town, everybody just started dancing. And they couldn't stop dancing. This whole town just starts dancing. And people died from dancing too much. And they don't know why this happened. It was just all of a sudden, the same thing happened. There was another town in Germany, I think it was in Hamburg, where all of a sudden everybody in the town just went crazy. Like they just like lost their minds for no reason. Well, there was like a weird religious group that was there. But so that can happen. But this is where we get like copycat behavior, because when something becomes a social contagion. A lot of time in schools and in small towns, if there is a suicide, there tends to be a cluster of suicides right after. Okay, and they believe that it is basically just copycat behavior. They see one person do it, and that maybe, if they were thinking about it, that empowers them or whatnot. Really, any sort of violence, school shootings, just shootings in general. Shit, we've had like 4 shootings this week, right? Okay, but you notice they a lot of times cluster together. Police shooting people. I mean, it happens a lot, but it seems that shit. Like earlier this week, Derek Chauvin was convicted of murder. All right, and the day after, a police officer kills a kid in Columbus, Ohio. I don't understand why they can't stop shooting people. Like, especially young African American men, seems relatively simple to not shoot people, but I don't know. What do I know?
Is this like the psychology behind like rioting?
Sort of. Although, I mean, conformity plays a role in that. And then there's what's called de-individuation that goes into that, group polarization. But yes, kind of. All right, so social contagions go into conformity, where all of a sudden, just in a society, just all starts acting in a certain way. And then our need to follow social norms. All right? We adjust our behavior to go along with a group standard. Because we want to fit in. Humans are very social creatures, and we hate being ostracized. We cannot stand not being accepted by the group. And we will oftentimes go against what we believe, go against our better judgment, simply to be accepted. This was studied in 1955 by a guy named Solomon Asch. And this is one of the big three. He wanted to see what were the circumstances that led to conformity. What was it that led to people going against what they actually knew to be true? So what he did was he set up an experiment with 5 or 6 people where they were all sitting at a table, but all but one of them is what is called a confederate. Confederates are people that are part of an experiment, but the actual participant does not know that they are in on the experiment. Like they're acting like they are participants. So one of them is not in on it. 4 of them are. 4 or 5 of them are. And what they would do is all they would ask them was to say, which of these lines right here is the same as that line? Simple. We would all hopefully say 2. And so what they would do is the participant would be like the last or the second to last person. And so they started off and they would say the correct line, but then all of a sudden something funny would happen. And they would start saying, everybody would start saying the wrong line. And they wanted to see how many people would go along with it. Right? And so people did. All right, so we're going to watch here's a quick video of Ash's experiment.
The Ash experiment is one of psychology's oldest and most popular pieces.
So when they show the guy answering the questions, it's the guy in the red shirt right here. On the first trial where they say one that is clearly wrong, he dissents from the group on the first trial. So, meaning he goes against the group, knowing that they are wrong. But I want you to watch him as he is going against the group, because it's funny to watch his face. Okay?
A volunteer is told that he's taking part in a visual perception test. What he doesn't know is that the other participants are actors, and he's the only person taking part in the real test, which is actually about group conformity.
Please begin. The experiment you will be taking part in today involves the perception of line length. Your task will be simply to look at the line here on the left and indicate which of the 3 lines on the right is equal to it in length. So, for example,
the actors have been told to match the wrong lines. The volunteer will be monitored to see if he gives the correct answer or if he goes along with the opinion of the group and gives the wrong answer. In the first test, the correct answer is 2.
1. 1. 1. 2.
1. Once again, the correct answer is 2.
3. 3. 3.
3.
3.
The Ash experiment has been repeated many times, and the results have been supported again and again. We will conform to the group. Again, we're very social creatures. We're very much aware of what the people around us think. We want to be liked. We don't want to be seen to rock the boat, so we will go along with the group. Even if we don't believe what people are saying, we'll still go along.
1. 1. 1.
Group dynamics is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology.
1.
Okay, so we've all experienced something like that before, okay? Going along with the group even when you know that they are wrong. But what is, on that first trial, when he dissents from the group, did anybody notice his face while he's doing that? What do you notice? What did you notice in his face? He was very confused. And let me see if I can get to. All right, confusion, not at ease at all. And he kind of makes this face of like, what? Like he goes against them, but you can tell how difficult it is for him to go against them. Like it really causes him like anguish going against them because A, it's a group of people he doesn't know. B, dissenting from the group is a really difficult thing. All right? So, some of the factors. So, with Ash's study, which has been done hundreds of times, they found that about a third of people conformed, and 70% conformed at least once and went along with the group. Now, a couple of factors that they have found that go into conformity, that strengthen it. The biggest one is the perception, doesn't have to be true, but the perception that the group is unanimous on something, meaning that everybody agrees with it. And I want you to think about, it's an easy example. Think about when you're in class, everybody's in person, in class, and the teacher asks at the end of class, does anybody have any questions? Does anybody ever ask any questions? No. That's a bad question on our part, but it's just like, we're like, all right, we gotta ask. All right, somebody has questions, but nobody wants to be the person to sort of break the group unanimity of nobody asking any questions, right? Because A, the group seems to be unanimous. B, it seems to us that everybody is acting independently of one another by not asking a question. But then what tends to happen, let's say that there is somebody, there's always one student in class who's going to be the person to ask questions. What happens when one person asks the question? Then it pops the group unanimity. And now it's no longer unanimous, and people are like, well, shit, I do have a question, so now I can ask it. Okay? There needs to be at least 3 people in the group. If it was just you and if it was just me and Brandon Webb hanging out, right, we can kind of make our own decisions and we can dissent from one another. Right? If you admire the group's status, if you're in 7th grade and hanging out with your older brother and his friends, shit, you're going to go along and do whatever they want to do. As long as you don't have another prior commitment, you're going to go along with behavior. And then there's the perception that everybody has sort of independently agreed to do this thing. So we're going to finish up by watching another clip. Who in here has seen Mean Girls? You all seen Mean Girls? No? Anybody in the Zoom call seen Mean Girls? All right, a Tarv. Anybody else seen Mean Girls? Only one person? Okay, that's actually surprising to me because that's a movie that yesterday, like everybody was like, if you haven't, Mean Girls is a great movie that it's hilarious, and it deals with what we were talking about. It's literally a movie about this unit. Okay, so in this clip, you're going to see. So the premise of the movie is that Lindsay Lohan just coming to a U.S. high school for the first time. She had been living in Africa, and she gets in with like this very popular group called the Plastics. And in this clip, you're seeing they are the girls, which is Rachel McAdams and Amanda Seyfried and the other one, talking about sort of what their rules as a group are. Okay, so here you go.
get pregnant.
I have health class.
Don't have sex, because you will get pregnant.
Hey, how's your second day?
Fine. Were people nice? No.
Did you make any friends?
Yeah. Having lunch with the plastics was like leaving the actual world and entering girl world. And girl world had a lot of rules.
You can't wear a tank top 2 days in a row, and you can only wear your hair in a ponytail once a week. So I guess you picked today. Oh, and we only wear jeans or track pants on Fridays. Now, if you break any of these rules, you can't sit with us at lunch. Well, I mean, not just you, like any of us. Okay, like if I was wearing jeans today, I would be sitting over there with the art freaks. Oh, and we always vote before we ask someone to eat lunch with us because you have to be considerate of the rest of the group. Well, I mean, you wouldn't buy a skirt without asking your friends first if it looks good on you.
I wouldn't.
Right. Oh, and it's the same with guys. Like, you may think you like someone, but you could be wrong.
120 calories and 48 calories for fat. What percent is that?
48 into 120.
All right, so there you go. So there appears to be the perception of unanimity within the group that those are the agreed upon rules, and so everybody just conforms and goes along with it, even if it is not reality. Okay, guys. All right, so next class we will talk about obedience. We'll finish up with conformity. We'll talk about obedience. And then group dynamics, group think, group polarization, and de-individuation.